UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Royval 2, full card predictions. This event is in Mexico City, so I do think the elevation will play a pretty big factor in at least some of these fights that go longer. But as always, I'll break it down starting from the first fight of the night, which is Muhammad Naimov versus Eric Silva. I won't spend too much time on this one because there's a reason Muhammad Naimov is a minus 600. There's a ton of ways I can break this down as far as why Naimov should win and is going to win. Eric Silva, he's hasn't fought in over a year and he's about to be 37. He had one fight in the UFC actually, and this was the only one in the UFC. He lost to TJ Brown by arm triangle. So got submitted by TJ Brown, who's hasn't hasn't done too well in the UFC himself, so not the greatest look there. On the other hand, you have a surging Naimov who has taken some losses on the regional scene, including on the Contender Series a few years back. But since then, he's bounced back. And his last two wins, his first two fights actually in the UFC, he beat Jamie Malarkey up a weight class on short notice. Um, I see people that were like, "Oh, well, Malarkey's chinny." I mean, he fought Francisco Prado and beat Prado, and Naimov knocked him out. So, I don't think you can really say too much about Naimov about him winning that fight. And then Nathaniel Wood, another one people aren't giving him credit for. They're just saying Nathaniel Wood is too small and he's a 135er and everything. Nathaniel Wood signed the contract at 45. He knew what he was getting himself into. So Naimov did what he had to do, and he won both fights. I don't know why people are complaining about it. Um, they're giving him this fight because it's the easiest fight on the roster, so he's going to win. Probably inside the distance. I don't think it'll take 3 rounds for Naimov to beat a guy like Eric Silva. Eric Silva's striking is atrocious. It's embarrassing. When I was watching him try to strike, it wasn't good at all. Not that Naimov's a good, really good striker, but I feel like he's probably the better striker of the two for sure. And then even in the grappling, I think Naimov can defeat Eric Silva there. He can probably submit him. I'll say round one is what should happen if Naimov's anything, considering Eric Silva isn't. Next up, we have Victor Altamirano, Felipe dos Santos. Now, this fight is a little bit more. I think the line should be a little bit closer to minus 300. That's the first thing I'll say. Only because Victor Altamirano is a pretty, 4 fights into the UFC, hasn't fought anyone like Manel Cap. And the fact that Felipe dos Santos went the distance with him on short notice, it was a good performance from him. But then again, I feel like certain guys that come, that fight on short notice, and then they have their next fight and they don't look as good against an opponent that they should be able to beat. So I don't know if Felipe dos Santos is, minus 300 is a pretty steep line for a guy who's 7-1. He's 23 years old. So against a guy that's experienced in Altamirano, I mean, I'll lean Felipe dos Santos winning this fight just because I think Altamirano does make some mistakes. He accepts being off his back, being on his back. His takedown defense, as we've seen, he can get taken down. What else? He ducks his head. Like whenever someone does pressure him, he does drop his head and tries to clinch a lot of times. That's not a good idea. You can get kneed right to the head and knocked out or at least hurt in this fight. So there are a few things that definitely concern me about Altamirano. I don't really love his boxing either, but he is tough enough to make it a competitive 3 round scrap. He's a tricky guy sometimes on the feet to hit, and that's Tim Elliott took him down and just took him down all 3 rounds en route to a 30-27. He beat Vinicius Salvador, who's just headhunting the whole time. He was just avoiding the boxing of Salvador. Daniel Lacerda beat him in round one, but that's Daniel Lacerda who loses every fight after he, sometimes has a good start. And then the split loss to Carlos Hernandez. So yeah, Altamirano, he can keep fights close. I do think Dos Santos has the ability to win though. I could see this being, closer than people expect, but I still would have to lean Dos Santos just being, in my opinion, the overall better fighter, much younger fighter as well. So I'll lean him there. It's not, the line is a little bit crazy, but Luis Rodriguez, Denise Bondar. Now, am I just going to call Bondar a fraud right off the bat? I mean, he kind of is 19-4. I mean, you could say maybe both based off records. You could say maybe both guys are kind of frauds because Luis Rodriguez is not beating a super high level of competition either. But Bondar, man, like Bondar, he's had two fights in the UFC, lost both. He did get hurt in the Malcolm Gordon fight, but man, I mean, if you look at his some of his regional fights, he's fighting against like 4-3, 3-1, 0-2 opponents, and then he finally fights some like guys with at least decent records back in 2019, 2020. But he's been inactive. He's been very inactive. Hasn't fought in almost a year. Hernandez. I think Luis Rodriguez is the more active guy of the two. And then Bondar, just look at he's fought twice in the last 3.5 years, and that the one fight was the fight against Malcolm Gordon where he got hurt in the first round. So he really had one full fight in the last 3.5 years against Carlos Hernandez, and Hernandez beat him up. He did win round two off on the numbers at least, but lost the fight round three, getting dominated, um, and got slammed down, bounced his head off the mat, and then the headbutt put him out cold. So coming off of like an actual knockout, plus the elbows were landed on the ground as well for Hernandez. So that was a vicious knockout, whichever way you want to put it, even if it was a headbutt. He did take a lot of time off, I get it, but coming back in Mexico City to fight Luis Rodriguez, don't really like that for him. Um, Plus the fact that I think the guy's kind of a fraud. His record coming into the UFC was really good, and then he just similar with Rodriguez. You could say the same about Rodriguez, 15-2 off of fighting not really great opponents, pretty low level opponents himself. But he's 24 years old. You know what I mean? I feel like people are putting a lot of stock into that Contender Series fight he had against Jerome Rivera, which he lost, and I get why Jerome Rivera is not very good, so losing to him is a bad look. But I think Rodriguez, that was when he was 21. He's 24 now. He's had to improve a little bit. I don't think you need to improve much to be the guy like Denise Bondar. I don't think Bondar is very good. So I will lean Luis Rodriguez to get it done over Bondar. Both guys haven't really, Bondar or Rodriguez, haven't proven anything yet at this point, though. So both of these guys have a lot to prove. Um, Puelas Faresiam is the next fight. In this one, I'm going to go with Faresiam. Claudio Puelas is just a knee bar merchant. As far as I'm concerned, the Dan Hooker fight was just a travesty. Just watching that was just that. If you're a fan of Claudio Puelas watching that fight, you're thinking to yourself like, well, what the hell is going on with this guy? He's rolling for knee bar. Well, we all know he rolls for knee bars. That's what he loves to do. It's low percentage against people that are competent fighters, fighters that actually go in with a game plan, go in with fight IQ, and know okay, I'm not going to grapple with this guy because you know what he's going to do. And I think I'm smart enough to know not to grapple with this guy, so I think he'll be safe enough to avoid the knee bar and therefore get the win. The striking of Claudio, it's not on Ziam's level. Now you could say the same about the grappling. There is a grappling advantage for Claudio, but how does he get the fight to the ground? He's not a wrestler. For SEM is good takedown defense, and even if he does, slip and get taken down or something, I don't think Ziam's gonna just accept being on his back. Actually, I'd rather have him accept being on his back, um, like in full guard, than have Puelas try to latch up a submission in a scramble or something. So either way, I like CM to win. Claude, that fight against Dan Hooker, if you guys remember that fight, I went back and watched it because I was like, how bad really was that? It was pretty pathetic. The guy was just, he was falling down, just trying, I guess, doing whatever he could to get Dan Hooker to follow him down to the mat. And I think he broke, honestly. I think Dan Hooker broke him. I think mentally knowing that Dan Hooker, escaped, you could say, yeah, escaped his best thing. Like Claudio Puelas, his best attribute he has, the best thing he does in fights is look for leg locks, look for knee bars. And the fact that Dan Hooker was in the knee bar, didn't tap, got out of it, and then ended up, beating up on Claudio, I think that just kind of mentally broke him. I think Fresiam can do the same, just mentally break this guy. If he doesn't get what he wants, he's a terrible nail. Um, and he's a pretty good hammer in some of his fights, but like I said, he's a bad nail. And when he gets beaten, he wants to give up, and I think he'll give up here against Fressian. So I'm taking Fares to get it done. Fares, not really a power puncher. A lot of his fights go the distance, so I could see Fares just trying to outpoint him to a decision. But yeah, I just don't like the hook. It wasn't even just a hooker fight. I mean, the guys he's beating, Claudio, are guys that some of them are like grappling with him willingly. I mean, Clay Guida, he submitted him. Guida was the one that took him down. Chris Grutzmacher's not really a good fighter. Not a good fighter. Had no takedown defense in that fight. Just looked like he didn't, never defended a takedown in his life, to be honest. Jordan Levitt's a guy who will grapple with anyone. He grappled with Chase Hooper, so of course he's going to grapple with Claudio. I just think Fares is going to be smart enough not to grapple with him, keep this fight on the feet, and outstrike him to a clear win, is what should happen. Puelas has the submission threat, but outside of that, knee bar, I don't really see how he beats a more well-rounded fighter like Fressian. Next is Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda. Both guys missed weight, uh, which is interesting. The fight's still going on. Edgar Chairez should be the bigger guy here, probably because he missed weight by more. 127 to 131 weight miss. So it's really odd to me why this fight's still going on or what they're kind of planning on doing here. But I do think Edgar Chairez wins. I picked him in the last fight they were gonna have, or they did have, and that ended in a no contest because the ref stopped the fight early. I mean, the same result was gonna be, was gonna happen anyway. Edgar Chairez was gonna win by submission. He had him in the guillotine. Daniel Lacerda didn't tap, didn't or not. They didn't even tap. He didn't go to sleep, which is what the ref thought. So yeah, I mean, Edgar Chairez is going to win this one. Daniel Lacerda, if you look, he's done nothing in the UFC so far. He's lost 4 in a row, and he's not losing to him. Jeff Molina lost to him, got finished by him, lost in a minute by knee bar to Francisco Figueiredo, got ground and pounded by Victor Altamirano, and then had some success against CJ Vergara early. Actually rocked Vergara, but ended up losing that one as well. Edgar Chairez, this is at altitude or at elevation, like 7,000 feet or something crazy. I don't know the exact number, but crazy elevation. Edgar Chairez, after Daniel Lacerda gasses out in 2 minutes, he'll probably throw the kitchen sink at him for 2 minutes. But as soon as he gasses out, Edgar should win this one, should finish him as soon. And that is his win condition. The win condition for Lacerda is to go out there in round one in the first like 2-3 minutes and land something crazy. But when he doesn't land that, or even if he does land something and Edgar eats it and doesn't get knocked out, I think the tide will turn. Edgar will pour it on and he'll win by finish. Um, could be by guillotine again, who knows? But I do think he'll finish Daniel Lacerda. This is the toughest fight of the night to pick, I would say, by a good margin. Jesus Aguilar, Mateus Mendonca. Toughest fight to pick on the entire card, in my opinion. Very, very difficult fight. On the side of both guys, I could say Aguilar, he makes mistakes. He makes grappling mistakes. His Contender Series fight showed that. Even though he won the fight with a guillotine. I mean, just go watch the fight if you haven't. You'll see plenty of mistakes that he's made. I don't like that if he makes mistakes early against Mendonca here, but then again, the cardio aspect is in play. Both guys are probably going to gas out. The reach is heavily on the side of Mateus Mendonca, 62-inch reach to 71.5-inch reach. So big, massive reach advantage for Mendonca. The thing is, I just can't trust his fight IQ after the Nate Maness fight. I mean, losing to Basharat, all right. I mean, he lost to Basharat, went the distance with him. Basharat pretty much dominated all 3 rounds. It wasn't super competitive. I mean, he clearly won. The Nate Maness fight, though, getting finished in round 1, looking for leg locks and everything, playing the leg lock game against Nate Maness and then getting, ground and pounded for it and finished. Terrible look. The guy's young. He's 25, but, that's just not the game you want to play. You know what I mean? You don't want to just be looking for leg locks on a guy that's trying to punch you in the face on the ground. Jesus Aguilar makes a ton of grappling mistakes. Hard to trust him. Pulls guillotine. Mendonca, bad fight IQ. Mike probably will gas out here. Um, I have no idea who I'm going to pick. I still don't know. I mean, Aguilar knocked out Shannon Ross, but what does that really mean? Shannon Ross is the chinniest guy, one of the worst guys on the roster. Probably shouldn't even been on the roster. So, uh, I mean, I'm just going to take the underdog Aguilar. I'm just going to take him and just hope that Mendonca gasses out because I mean, I don't think he'll be able to keep up a pace if he does pressure and try to wrestle Aguilar. I think if anyone's going to have the better cardio, I think it's Aguilar. So I think, I'm 50-50 on it. I'm going to take the guy that I know won't quit and has better cardio, which is Aguilar. Mendonca, the fact that I've seen him in the Nate Maness fight just pull leg locks just showed me, all right, I'd rather have a guy that pulls guillotine because that's higher percentage than playing with leg locks and leaving your head out there to get punched. So yeah, and by the way, if it does get late into the fight, second and third round, those guillotines might actually work for Aguilar. Those leg locks for Mendonca probably won't work later in the fight. If both guys are tired, if Aguilar pulls guillotine, he'll still squeeze hard on that. I'll lean Aguilar. No conviction though. It's really 50-50 to me. Next fight of the night, we have Christian Quinones and Raoni Barcelos. I like Quinones here over Barcelos. Um, I know he's an underdog. I know he just lost to Kyung Ho Kang. He got dropped first and then submitted right after. Not really like a club and sub because he dropped him and then kind of got him passed right into Mount and then submitted him. It wasn't like a club and sub right away. But regardless, for Quinones, I do think he's a good striker. I think Randy Barcelos is getting older. I don't know how Barcelos' cardio is going to hold up here, being almost 37 years old. And it's not. I guess you could say it's more of a fade on the age and the just wear and tear on Barcelos. I don't trust his chin at this point. In his prime for prime, I think Barcelos has him clear, but this isn't Barcelos' prime. I don't like taking older guys. There are certain circumstances where you could take an older fighter to win. I think here, as a favorite, if Barcelos was an underdog, maybe you could have more of a clear shot of taking him. But as a minus 170 favorite, 1-4 in his last five against a young up and coming guy who's a good striker, got pretty good power too. And Christian Quinones, I mean, knocked out Khalid Taha, landed a great shot there. Um, didn't really beat a lot of great level of competition, like up until up until this Tony Barcelos fight. But Kyung Ho Kang is an experienced UFC fighter, and before he got finished by Kyung Ho Kang, he actually did rock Kang first, but just got a little bit too just tried to jump on him and finish him too quickly, and that's when he got tagged back, and that's when he got hurt. So I think if he minds his P's and Q's against Barcelos, he might be able to win a fight against him here. I just don't like the age of Barcelos. The Kyler Phillips fight, he got dropped in the first round. Looked good, and as the fight went on. So I don't know if he's falling off completely, but I think the chin, if you crack him on the chin, he might go down. He might drop. He might get knocked out. At this age, his only win in the last multiple years is Trevin Jones, who we know Trevin Jones just throws no output. So all Raoni Barcelos had to do is throw more output than you know 5 strikes around, which he did, and he won the fight. The Umar Nurmagomedov fight was a year ago. He got flatlined. So in his last 2 fights, he's gotten chinned. The Umar fight, he got knocked out brutally. In the Kyler Phillips fight, he got dropped but recovered and put on a decent performance as the fight went on. So yeah, as far as this one, like I said, just don't trust his chin. Don't trust the age. In prime, Barcelos probably wins pretty clearly here, but he's not really in his prime anymore. He's slower. Um, I feel like Quinones this would be a big feather in the cap for him, especially in Mexico City. So that's another factor. I'll take him as an underdog. We move along to the main card. First fight on the main card is Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. I like Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres is devastating with his power, and it's not even just the power; it's just he has an ability to just swing like it's not even just him swinging massively. Like he just has an ability to find the chin. The fight against Nicholas Mota, that knockout was absolutely insane. Crazy knockout. A step in elbow and just blasted him right across the face. Knocked him out cold. Mota was out. One of the craziest knockouts of the year. Before that, knocked out Frank Camacho, and then Colton England finished him on the Contender Series. So Manuel Torres, he just has an ability. He has like just finds a way to the chin, finds a way to knock guys out. Whether that be with an elbow, with punches, doesn't matter. You know, if he touches your chin, you're in trouble. Chris Duncan, on the other hand, fighting out of ATT, American Top Team, which I do like usually, and I do like it here. I do like that he's training out of American Top Team, getting a lot of different looks from high level guys. I know he's been training with guys that are elite, world class fighters in the 155 and surrounding divisions. So I do like that for Chris Duncan. I like that he's training out of ATT. The thing is, though, as far as his actual fights, I haven't been super impressed. Slava Claus knocked him out cold, flatlined him. That was on the Contender Series a few years back, 2.5 years ago almost. But, got flatlined with the left hook there. You move along to the Charlie Campbell fight. He got rocked in that fight too. He got rocked bad in that fight, and then he knocked out Charlie Campbell in return. When Campbell got a little bit too, he left himself open trying to like look for the finish, and then he got finished himself. But like Campbell had him rocked, man. So and so that's two guys. So that's Slava Claus, and then Campbell had him rocked. Omar Morales and Ash Moose. Morales, Chris Duncan tried to wrestle a lot in that fight. I don't think he's going to have a lot of wrestling success here at 7,000 feet of elevation. If he does, he'll get tired. Can guarantee you that. I know Duncan's known for having good cardio. I don't think he's going to wrestle here. I think that would be a terrible game plan. And then Ash Moose. I don't think Ash Moose is any like. I think he's got some power, obviously, as we saw in the Sam Patterson fight. But I don't think Ash Moose is that next level or anything crazy. And Ash Moose also got hurt in the first round of that fight. So all those factors, I think Chris Duncan over 3 rounds, he's good. I just don't know if his chin's going to last, taking a bomb from Manuel Torres. Slava Claus knocked out Chris Duncan. Slava Claus hits very hard. I think Manuel Torres has, great finishing instinct. He knows, it doesn't have to be punches. It could be an elbow. It could be anything. And just the way he knocked out Mode, the way he's finishing guys, he's just on a roll right now. I'm going to take him to win in Mexico City. Manuel Torres, another Mexican fighter to win over Chris Duncan. Next fight on the main card, we have Yasmin Yaragui versus Sam Hughes. Another one where I'm not going to spend too much time on because I think most people have an idea of who's going to win this fight. Yasmin Yaragui is a minus 600 for a reason. Sam Hughes is 8-5. She hasn't looked great in really any fights. The Jacqueline Amarim fight 10 months ago was her best fight, just for the sole fact that Amarim was a hyped up jiu-jitsu prospect and she beat her. However, Amarim did have her, did body triangle her for the entire first round and kind of just death gassed and lost rounds 2 and 3 to Sam Hughes, the more experienced fighter. I don't think that's going to happen to Yasmin Yaragui here. She's got power. She's a better striker of the two. Sam Hughes, I just don't trust her. If you look through her record, she's lost a ton of fights. Vanessa Demopoulos, beat her, finished her via inverted triangle back in 2020. Tisha Torres beat her. Loma Lookboonmee, Luana Pinheiro. She went to a majority decision against Estela Nunes, a girl who Yarrigui finished. I know it's MMA math, but still. Just looking, Elise Reed finished her. Elise Reed has zero grappling at all. Pierre Rodriguez lost to her and then beat Amarim. So, yeah, I don't really like Sam Hughes. Not at all. Yasmin Yaragui, on the other hand, I think she is a decent prospect. I don't know how far she's going to go, but I do think she wins this one pretty clearly. I know her last fight was a knockout loss to Denise Gomez, but Denise Gomez is known for her KO power. Estela Nunes dropped her and finished her. And the Yasmin Lucindo fight, that was an incredible fight. Lucindo, one of the younger um, prospects in the UFC as well. And they had a really competitive striking fight and just a great fight in general. So Yasmin Yaragui, about to be 25 years old, over the 31-year-old Sam Hughes. I think she's only getting better, and Sam Hughes is not a great fighter to begin with. So I'm going to take Yasmin Yaragui pretty clearly. Raul Rosas and Ricky Tercios is the next fight. I know some people are on Tercios. I don't really get it. He's not good. Raul Rosas is good. I'm taking Raul Rosas to win. Rosas, the only way he loses this fight is if he goes all out for the sub in round one or all out, for the finish in round one and doesn't get it. That's the only way he would lose this fight is by just death gassing early and Tercios taking over. But I just don't see Tercios as the guy to win against Rosas. Rosas, his only loss was to C-Rod Christian Rodriguez, who, as we've seen, C-Rod has won fights after that. He's proven to be a good UFC fighter. Um, so no real shame in Rosas losing. And he actually did dominate the first round of the C-Rod fight before he did get tired and lost rounds 2 and 3. I think C-Rod would dominate Ricky Tercios from bell to bell. I think he would make it look clear. The last fight won a split against Kevin Natividad. The Ayman Zahabi fight, he threw a ton of volume, but didn't really land anything. Was just throwing a lot of output, just hitting air the entire night. Lost there. Brady Heaston won a split over him 2.5 years ago. I just think Ricky Tercios, one, I don't think he has a lot of finishing ability. I don't think he's very powerful. I don't think he has a ton of finishing ability. He's got decent cardio. I just don't think he's on the, I guess you could say, on the level of Raul Rosas. Rosas trains with very good guys. Trains with guys like Aljo, Marab, those guys out in Vegas. So he has very good training partners surrounding him, helping him get better. He's learning from the best in the business at this weight class. And I don't think the UFC would give him a fight in Mexico on the main card against the guy they thought would give him a real challenge, a real opportunity of him losing. I think the UFC knows what they're doing. Rosas should win this fight if he doesn't gas out. He's got the power on the feet. I know it's Terrence Mitchell. All right, I get it, but still dropped him, like pretty much flatlined him for a second. And then I guess Mitchell woke back up, and then Rosas ended up finishing him. But if you look through his fights, sure, he hasn't really fought the greatest UFC competition, but Tercios isn't C-Rod. He's not. He's a guy that Rosas can take down, a guy that Rosas could probably manhandle as far as the grappling, get on top of. So Rosas can get on top of Tercios. In the striking, he's better as well if it really comes down to there. I know a lot of people don't rate the striking of Rosas, but do you really rate the striking of Tercios? I don't. So I think Rosas gets this one done. Next fight is Daniel Zellhuber versus Francisco Prado. In this one, it's another one where the line's a little bit too wide for me. I'm going to go with Daniel Zellhuber. I'm going to pick him to win, but I think the line is too wide. Daniel Zellhuber at minus 275. Prado does have a path to victory. Zellhuber's been hit clean before, been rocked a few times, got hit clean by Yagos. If Prado hits you clean, it could be lights out. Prado has extreme power. We know that. He's training at a goat shed, so he's could be explosive early in the first round. I'm not sure what his game plan is going to be against a guy like Zellhuber. I feel like if Prado's game plan is to start strong, start fast, it could give Zellhuber some trouble, but it also could sap the cardio if he does try to find an early finish. For Zellhuber, I think he's a better minute winner than Prado. I think Prado is probably a better moment winner. But Zellhuber's got a little bit of power in his own right. I mean, his punches do have some sting when he sits down on them. I just do think he's a little bit more of a point fighter, a guy that doesn't mind, picking his shots and trying to win a decision. Excuse me. Versus Prado, a guy who more so looks to find the finish. And if you look at Prado's record, he only has one fight that went the distance in his entire career, and that was against Jamie Malarkey. And that was a fight in which he lost. Yeah, I am going to go with Zellhuber. Prado is live, especially early. In the first round, he's live for a knockout. Really, in any round, he could be live for a knockout, but I just think Zellhuber is the better fighter overall. Better striker, training at a really good gym, the better gym out of the two. Goach had great gym, but it's not Extreme Couture. Extreme Couture, Coach Eric Nixick, the best in the business. And I think, Eric does speak pretty highly of Daniel Zellhuber. He does believe in him. And I think the Trey Ogden fight was a bit, not a fluke, definitely not a fluke, but just a bad performance from Zellhuber, UFC jitters. You know what I mean? First fight in the UFC. He bounced back and beat Lando Venata and Christos Giagos back to back after that. This is a step up, I believe, just because I think Prado has that, you know, KO shot that maybe Giagos or Lando don't really have in comparison. But I do think Zellhuber, outside of getting chinned early, probably wins this fight. So I will take him to win. Co-main event is a rematch of Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. They had their last fight a year and a half ago, and that was when Ortega injured his shoulder. And a lot of people are picking Yair here as a minus 150 slight favorite. I'm actually going to go with the underdog, Brian Ortega. This is going to be my underdog on the main card. The reason I like Brian Ortega here, I know he's coming off of 2 losses, but that actually is going to motivate him. I feel like he's going to be very motivated here to come get a win. Coming into Mexico City, he is fighting a tough guy in Yair Rodriguez. However, I've seen Yair quit before. I've seen him, kind of wilter. I know it's Alexander Volkanovski, but you saw the Brian Ortega fight. Ortega, all it takes is a split second for him to jump on a submission. That Brian Ortega fight, that Alexander Volkanovski fight for Ortega was actually I know he lost the fight clearly, but he had some moments where Volkanovski was close to getting submitted. Brian Ortega's got really opportunistic jiu-jitsu. I think his boxing is honestly, I don't even know if this is a hot take. I think his boxing is better than Yair Rodriguez. I think if he walks in a range and they just box, I think Brian Ortega can get the better of Yair. I do think Yair is better at kickboxing range, obviously, because he does. It's clear he has better kicks. If they do stay at that kickboxing range, I think it will favor Yair. I just don't think Brian Ortega will let him stay at that kicking range. I think he's probably going to try to crowd him. Ortega's tough enough to take a shot to try to enter range and either give a shot or try to get like a body lock or something, which is what he got the first fight. The first fight, Brian Ortega, and I feel like a lot of people were thinking that Yair was clearly winning that first fight. He's going to win again. I don't think he was necessarily winning that first fight in the first round. I think in the first round, actually, Ortega was implementing his game plan better than Yair was, because Brian Ortega was the one that got the body lock, pushed him up against the cage held him against the cage for 2 minutes. I think Ortega probably can find a way to take Yair down in this fight. And if Brian Ortega gets on top of Yair, it's bad news for Yair. Max Holloway mounted Yair. I feel like Yair, he's a guy who has been out-grappled multiple times, has been ground and pounded out by Frankie Edgar. That was a few fights before. Let me see. He got ground and pounded out by Frankie Edgar. Um, the Max Holloway fight. He like I said, I mean, he was looking good on the feet, but he did get taken down and put in bad positions by Max Holloway, and Holloway's not as good of a grappler. Obviously, Holloway the much better striker, but he's not as good of a grappler as Brian Ortega. I think if Ortega, I think somewhere during the fight, especially if Yair gets a little bit tired, if they're both tired, I'm favoring Brian Ortega because I know Yair will probably make a mistake and maybe catch himself on his back, and then Ortega will work from there. I just think he's too opportunistic with his submission ability, and he's a better grappler than Yair. So if he gets on top early, it's big trouble for Rodriguez. I think it would be a terrible game plan for Ortega to try to just sit there and strike for 5 rounds at range. That would be the worst game plan. And if he does that, he's going to lose because you can't just sit at range and strike with this guy. But if you get into space, try to pressure him, try to make him make mistakes, and take him down, there's a clear path to victory. I mean, he's been taken down. He doesn't have good takedown defense. He has very bad takedown defense. His grappling is very suspect as well. Brian Ortega is much better grappling. So I don't know if Ortega should be this much, an underdog in general just because of that. 86% of people are picking Yair. I feel like that's also a factor. The fact that the public is heavily on Rodriguez is making me think. Plus, it's plus 125. It's not like Yair is like minus 300 for everyone picking him. So I'll lean Ortega. I'll say Ortega wins. Yair definitely has an ability on the feet to hurt Ortega and win with his kicking. But if Ortega gets in a range, starts landing some good combinations as far as his boxing goes, and then can maybe grab onto a body lock, try to drag him down, and if doesn't get hurt, doesn't get injured, we're going to see a different fight. So I'm going to go with Brian Ortega in the co-main event as an underdog. Main event of the evening now, we have Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. This is another rematch. I'm going to take the same side of this rematch, and that's Brandon Moreno. I'm taking him to beat Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval is good. He's taking this fight on short notice. Brandon Moreno is a different level at this point. I know Brandon Moreno's last fight was a loss to Alexandre Pantoja. That was a split loss. I thought he lost that fight to Pantoja, but we've seen with Pantoja, he dominated Royval, beat him clearly. I think Moreno's just, MMA math, I get it, but I think Moreno will be a step ahead. I think he's a better wrestler and grappler. I think if he does try to out wrestle Royval here, I know it's going to take a lot of, it's going to take a big gas tank to do it, but I think Moreno does have the gas tank to. All he needs is a takedown around. I think he'll probably be able to control Royval on the mat, and not even just the grappling. I think Moreno is just a better fighter overall. Royval is dangerous on the feet. He does have that danger factor, which is why Pantoja wanted to grapple him, wanted to take him down. But I feel like Moreno also has a bit of a danger factor on the feet, and Moreno's got a good chin. So Moreno, I feel like, is a very well-rounded fighter. He's got a really good chin. He's got a good gas tank. He's got good, very good wrestling and grappling, and he's got really good striking. So he's good everywhere. I think Royval is good in a lot of areas, but I just think he'll be a step behind Moreno here. I think early Royval could give Moreno some problems, and I definitely don't think Royval should be completely counted out, but I do think Brandon Moreno is going to be the winner here. In his home country, the people came to see Brandon Moreno. I feel like he's going to get back to that title shot. I don't know if it would be weird if they gave him a fourth one against Pantoja, but I mean, who else is there? I feel like, Royval just had his shot, and he got dominated pretty clearly. Moreno, that was a really competitive fight. I could see them running it back just, because they know it was going to be a really good fight. So I know I'm talking in the future already, but I think Brandon Moreno wins this fight against Brandon Royval to end the night. And those are my picks for UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Royval 2 in Mexico City. elevation, the fact that it's, it is going to play a factor in a lot of these fights. So I tried to pick a lot of guys that I know are going to be, fighting hard for 3 rounds, which is kind of the justification for some of the 50-50 picks I had. So, anyways, I thank you guys very much for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.